Administrators of Nigeria, ICSAN, is now at your doorstep.
By the way, what is corporate governance and what are its key pillars?
Will there be any conflict of interest if a person combines the roles of a chairman and a chief executive officer in a corporate organization?
What can Nigeria do to gain international recognition in the context of the application of corporate governance?
These and many more questions will be answered on
Corporate Governance Platform, a program designed to inform and educate our numerous viewers on the adoption of corporate governance best practices by corporate entities.
Join the Corporate Governance Platform Cool every Thursday at 4:30 p.m. on MITV, your talent station, via DSTV 255 and UHF 43.
Corporate Governance Platform, your strategy for the adoption of corporate governance best practices by corporate entities. Institute of Chartered Secretaries and Administrators of Nigeria, ICSAN, the hub of governance professionals.
Good evening and thanks for joining us on Corporate Governance Platform, coming to you live from MITV. Today is the first episode of the program in this new year. I'd like to say Happy New Year to all our viewers. I am Tunde Odeyemi, and in today's episode, we shall be discussing basic optimal practices in directors' appointments. And leading in the conversation is Mr. David OLATUNJI, FCIS. Mr. David OLATUNJI is an extraordinary trainer, teacher, speaker, and a corporate governance expert. He has communicated his thoughts on corporate leaders across industries and private sectors of the economy. He is well known for his practical, insightful, real-world perspectives on learning. His experience in education and knowledge impartation has spanned over 30 years in the banking, manufacturing, insurance, educational, communications, media, and the imaging sectors of the economy. He has thrived in intellectually stimulating and dynamic work environments that have ensured growth and development. He has received intense training both locally and abroad across Belgium, Germany, and the United Kingdom. He was a faculty member of ICSAN from 1997 to 2005 and also a council member of ICSAN between 1997 and 2004. He authors the book on the corporate governance study textbook for Institute of Chartered Secretaries and Administrators of Nigeria, ICSAN. He is the CEO of David OLATUNJI Leadership Academy, a learning hub for incubating leaders in good governance, authentic leadership. He is involved in international financial reporting standards training and consulting. Mr. David OLATUNJI, you are welcome to the show.
Thank you very much, Tunde Odeyemi. Thank you for bringing me. Good evening, audience.
And we'd like to thank you for finding time to make it to the show today.
Thank you very much.
It's the very first episode in the year 2021. That is profound for us.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, Mr. OLATUNJI, why is the issue of appointment to board important to corporate governance?
Thank you for that question. You know, the subject corporate governance is an interesting one and a very fascinating one indeed. You know, the very first definition of corporate governance was given by Sir Adrian Cadbury in 1992 to be the direction and the control of an organization, right? Especially as it balances the interests of different stakeholders with that organization. And the shareholders have a role to play in that corporate governance, you know, scenario by appointing the board of directors to represent them as agents of the principal. So the issue is this: the owners of the business have brought their business together, but they can't run the business by themselves. So they need agents to run the business. So they have to bring in these people, individuals that are called board of directors by KAMA, you know, to come and run the organization. So the issue is important because these are just the only organ that could formulate, implement corporate strategy. They are the ones that can set the strategic direction of the organization, In short, the board of directors is the leadership, that every organization needs to move forward. So it's very important because without the board of directors, forget corporate governance. As a matter of fact, if anybody asks me now, what is a synonym to corporate governance, I will be very quick to say that it is board governance. Corporate governance is more or less about 80% of board governance, of how the board directs the organization, how the board leads the organization, how the board balances the interests of different stakeholders in the organization, how the board sets the relationships of all the stakeholders to make sure that one does not jeopardize the other, in a bid to sustainably manage the organization into the future.
Talking about appointments of directors into the board, the Code of Corporate Governance recommends that considerations such as strengths and weaknesses of the existing board, integrity, required competence and skills, knowledge and experience, and capacity to undertake the responsibility that's going to be given to the director, among others, should be considered.
Yeah.
Why are these factors relevant in appointment of a director into the board?
As I mentioned before, when you look into any organization, any institution, there are three organs of corporate governance. You have the board of directors, you have the shareholders, you have the board of directors, and you have the management.
Okay.
Right. But the organ that sets the strategic future of the organization are called the board of directors.
Okay.
So when the board of directors meet, they deliberate. In the deliberations, decisions are baked. So the quality of deliberations is also the quality of the decisions. The quality of the decisions determine the strategic direction of the organization.
Wonderful.
There is no organization that can rise above the quality of leadership of the board. And the leadership of the board is rooted in the quality of the deliberations they do. That means the decisions of the board reflect the character of board members. The decisions of the board reflect their personal characteristics. It reflects their experiences. It reflects their strengths and weaknesses that you mentioned before. Yeah. It reflects their competencies. It reflects, their cognitive personality. It reflects who they are. And that is why the Code of Corporate Governance is now saying, okay, if you bring in anybody into the organization, especially PLC, in order to manage, in order to govern the organization, all these characteristics are extremely very important. All these qualities are important. You have to consider their capability. You've got to consider their competency. You've got to consider their strengths as individuals and collectively as a board. You've got to consider where they have been, where they have not been, their likes, their dislikes. So many things are involved. Otherwise, you'll be having a board in your hand that is more of a liability than an asset.
So the value and the quality of the organization should reflect in the composition of the board.
Of course, it should. For instance, if you want to set up a board for an educational institution,
okay,
and you now bring in only those who have gone to school to read education, to do education, you are injuring the future of that organization. Do you understand? Because there must be some kind of diversity. There must be some kind of varied experiences, varied qualifications, varied backgrounds, of the board of directors. And when the board of directors want to fill vacancies on the board, I'm sure you know that the initial board of directors are appointed by the shareholders, but the board of directors can now appoint, subsequently. So when they are about to fill the board, board vacancies with individuals, they must be very careful of those they are bringing. They must know their antecedents, what they've done before. They must know their capabilities. It's not just that we are bringing in lame dogs to come and sit as directors or complacent people or people who don't even really understand the business of the organization. So all these things are very, very important. Business acumen, knowledge of the business, knowledge of the society, knowledge of the company itself that you are bringing them for. All these things, constitute the
Okay, Mr. Latu, you talked about diversity, and I saw the code also talked about diversity, including gender diversity. Why do you think gender diversity is necessary on the board?
Well, that's very, very good question, because right now is a current debate globally.
Okay.
Diversity is simply valuing individuals on the board, try to accommodate individual differences, try to accommodate, varied backgrounds, try to bring in so many people. I'm sure you know that the word itself reflects diversity, right? If you have same directors who are thinking the same way, who are on the same page, then you don't really need a board, right? In 2010, something happened in the United Kingdom. Lord Davis of Abersock was invited by the government, to come and look into the issue of diversity, especially identifying why women are not reaching the board. Because at that time, the percentage of women on the board was less than 7%. So that became like some kind of concern to the British government and the Financial Reporting Council. So they brought him in, and he now began to introduce a lot of elements in diversity, like gender, like you mentioned. Why can't we bring in more women? And McKinsey actually has carried out a research, and it has concluded that the companies with more women representatives on the board actually perform better, than those who don't have that. So Lord Davis now, brought this out, for the UK Corporate Governance Code to incorporate that, look, let's have so many people on the board, including religion, including, personalities, including sex, orientations, and all that. Don't just let it be maybe a particular set of people. In Nigeria, for instance, you find out that, go and look at most of the PSC, is just the same set of people that they are recycling somehow, and they are usually almost above 70. Do you understand? So let's bring in younger generations. Right now, you have about 5 birth windows, in the old world. You have what you call the baby boomers, you have the Generation X, Generation Y, Generation Z, and so on and so forth. Why don't you bring in all these people in so that you can leverage on their different perspectives, different thoughts, and move the organization forward by accommodating, ideas from other people, especially from women. In Nigeria, we are actually improving on that, but we are not yet where we are. In Norway, for instance, the percentage of women now on the board is about 33%.
Wow.
Right. Because of that, the contributions of women are now improving effectiveness of the companies. Because women are sort of more caring. Women, they are the ones that go to the market, so they understand, the interest of the customers more, the interest of the clients more. So when they come on board, then they are not afraid to ask awkward questions. Women are likely to be bolder than men, on the board, in board deliberations. You see them contributing more boldly than men. So when you bring in all these, different, from different diverse cultures, diverse backgrounds, you are likely to have a more quality deliberations that will bring in better decisions.
Okay, Mr. Olatunji, what you're saying is that apart from the gender diversity, the age diversity is also important.
The age diversity is very important.
What are the strengths of the age diversity?
For instance, this is just a very quick example. After COVID, we have what is called the new normal.
Yeah.
You don't understand? The board meetings can no longer be, conducted physically. Do you understand? We have to begin to do so many things virtually. Older people don't like virtual. You know why? Because they are not IT savvy. They are afraid, of the social media. They are afraid. They cannot readily understand how to use all these technologies. Do you understand? But it's not like that for the young generations. So when you bring in the young generations on the board, they are also going to contribute, and it's also a way of refreshing the board. It's a way of bringing fresh energy into the board and bringing fresh perspectives from a younger generation to the board.
That's okay. The Code of Corporate Governance recommends that the committee of the board responsible for nominating and governance should recommend fit and proper persons to the board for consideration for directorship positions.
That's right.
Is this delegation to the said committee justified?
It's justified in so many ways, because when you're looking at decisions of the board as a whole cannot have time enough to begin to attract, new members, to begin to screen new members, to begin to interview new members, to begin to onboard new members, to begin to induct new members. So it has to be delegated to a very small microcosm of the board, which is called the committee. Okay. And one of them that the Code of Corporate Governance actually suggests is Nominations and Governance Committee. Right. So it's quite justified because they have the time to do it. They have the experience to do it. They have the qualifications to do it. But the only thing is this: it is not going to be justified if the details of the Code of Corporate Governance is not adhered to. For instance, that committee, nominations committee, excuse me, must be filled with only non-executive directors, majority of whom should be independent non-executive directors, and the chairman of the committee must be an independent non-executive director. So when you have it well composed, then it is justified, because they are the ones that can actually reach far, and near, in order to get very qualified people, to join the board.
Thank you very much. On this point, we'd like to go for a very short break. When we come back, we'll continue with the discussion with Mr. David Olatunji. Please stay with us.
Corporate Governance Platform, a program from the Institute of Chartered Secretaries and Administrators of Nigeria, ICSAN, is now at your doorstep.
By the way, what is corporate governance and what are its key pillars?
Will there be any conflict of interest if our person combines the roles of our chairman and a chief executive officer in a corporate organization?
What can Nigeria do to gain international recognition in the context of the application of corporate governance?
These and many more questions will be answered on
Corporate Governance Platform, a program designed to inform and educate our numerous viewers on the adoption of corporate governance best practices by corporate entities.
Join the Corporate Governance Platform crew every Thursday at 4:30 p.m. on MITV, your talent station, via DSTV 255 and UHF 43.
Corporate Governance Platform, your strategy for the adoption of corporate governance best practices by corporate entities. Institute of Chartered Secretaries and Administrators of Nigeria, ICSAN, the hub of governance professionals.
Corporate Governance Platform, a program from...
You are welcome back. We are still discussing the practices of board appointment, and I still have with me here in the studio Mr. David Olatunji. Mr. Olatunji, you talked about the importance of the board.
Yes.
And we know there is a particular function which is called board evaluation. What are the advantages of having a board evaluator?
That's so critical. Very good question, because I have identified, lack of board evaluation as one of the areas of weakness of corporate governance in Nigeria. A CEO of the company will readily agree that his staff must be evaluated. Another name actually for evaluation is review, right? So we are very quick to accept staff review. We are very quick to accept the review of employees, but they have not readily accepted the review of themselves. So it's like the evaluators don't want to be evaluated, but you have to be evaluated too. In other words, we want to check your performance, because you are not just there, to warm the bench. You are there in order to carry out some kind of responsibilities and duties. So periodically, as a matter of fact, the Code of Corporate Governance has said so that you have to be evaluated. Your performance must be reviewed. So performance evaluation is to review what the board of directors are actually doing, right? And there are so many advantages, but I will just mention maybe one or two because of the time frame that we have. Number one, it will afford the board of directors themselves to know, to self-assess themselves, whether they are actually contributing any value to the organization or not. Because if a director is not adding value to the organization, then the next thing is, honorably, you just need to step down and leave the place. Then it also contributes, to succession planning. I have found that many organizations are not even thinking in that direction at all. You see, as soon as a director comes on board, you must always see his exit, and you begin to plan for that exit. So staff evaluation, board evaluation now allows the chairman, and the non-executive directors, to plan, clearly to plan, carefully for board succession. Then board evaluation also will throw up at any point in time strengths and weaknesses of the board members. It will throw up the knowledge gap if there is any need, for them to be retrained, if there's any needs maybe for continuous professional education in any particular area. For instance, in our field, a subject is very critical these days, and it's called risk management. Okay. There are so many board members who are extremely very ignorant about what risk management really is. And honestly, globally, this is now the current debate that every board member must have at least a fair, knowledge of risk management. So board evaluation throws up, the gap in knowledge of board members. Then board evaluation also will give the organization, an idea of where is this company really going. And that is why the institute now has taken it upon itself to actually certify, board evaluators, or some of the people that we call, governance professionals, because it's a skill. There are skills needed to be able to do it. No, it's not just for anybody to do, right? There are skills there because there are things you look for, there are things you ask for, there are things you check before you are able to do board evaluation. So currently, that's what ICSAN is doing now, certifying, so many people, even people who are not our members, can come in, for certification in order to be able to carry out board evaluation very effectively.
Wonderful. You actually make more than 2 or 3 advantages of a board evaluator. Now, there is a provision in the corporate code of corporate governance requiring the board to make available some basic and adequate information to the shareholders on those to be proposed for directorship. Why do you think this disclosure is desirable?
The very cornerstone of corporate governance is disclosure.
Okay.
Disclosure is key to corporate governance because, the investors want to know what the organization is doing with their funds, what the board members are doing with their funds. And don't forget that, the agency theory now throws it up to us to know that the investors, they are the owners of their business. And the board of directors are the agents of the principal. Now, the principal says, come and run my business for me. So the principal now reserves the right to know who you are bringing in on board. Do you understand? You cannot just bring anybody on board because somehow, even if it is the board that appoints the directors, the shareholders will still need to ratify them, the appointment. So if the shareholders don't know who to ratify, if they don't know who is managing their business for them, then I don't think that is a good sense of corporate governance. So disclosure is extremely very important. We want to know them. We want to know what they have done before. We want to know how capable they are. We want to know their experience. We want to know their qualifications. We want to know how they will perform when they come. We want to know their age. We want to know so many things about board of directors. Investors must know. So disclosure is very key to corporate governance and is right.
Okay, the code also recommends that the tenure for independent non-executive directors should not exceed 3 terms of 3 years each. Why such limitation of tenure of resourceful persons like independent non-executive directors that the company has brought on the board?
Well, there is an assumption in your question that they are resourceful.
Okay. Because if they are not resourceful, you won't go and bring them. They are independent non-executive directors.
All right. So anyway, the current debate really is that many clients are actually reducing it now to 6 years of 2 terms. You see, the whole idea is this. Independent non-executive directors are supposed to bring independence to the deliberations and objectivity of the board.
Sure.
So they are never to be in a position to be compromised. They are never to be in a position where their opinions will be influenced, especially by the executive directors. So when you bring in independent non-executive directors to the organization, it is assumed that their independence begin to reduce. Do you understand? With time. Do you understand? They spend about 1 year, 2 years, 3 years. They become so familiar. There's something in corporate governance we call familiarity traits. Do you understand? They have mingled with the executive directors. So they are likely to now begin to just agree with the executive directors without asking the right questions they should ask now, because they have become familiar now. You understand? They have become accustomed, to how things are done in the organization. They have become like landowners now, more or less. The more they stay, so the more independent they are likely. So the more they stay, the more dependent they are now likely to be. So that is why it is suggested that, look, after 3 terms of 9 years, let them step down, let others come in. But the quoted, companies forum in UK actually has said that if after 9 years and a particular INED is still considered by the board to be independent, then it can still continue. But the onus now is on the board to consider that INED to be independent and that is still adding value. If a director is still adding value, even though he has spent 9 years, you can still allow him to continue, to keep adding value to the board. Okay.
This is going to be my last question, and it's going to be a twin question, and I want you to answer it within 1 minute.
1 minute.
In 60 seconds.
Okay.
You talked about the independent non-executive directors. What are the advantages of having them on the board? That's on one side. On the flip side is briefly tell us some of those factors that can make an independent non-executive director to lose his independence.
One very key advantage is that because of the name, they are not likely, they bring balance, to the board. They serve as a counterweight to the excesses of the executive directors. Do you understand? Because you can't bribe them, you can't do anything, or you are not supposed to do all such things to them. So they bring in some kind of checks and balances on the board, and they can ask the executive directors, very informed questions without being afraid. Do you understand? So that's key. And also they can provide like an alternative communication channel for the shareholders. Okay. When the normal communication channel breaks down between the chairman and the shareholders. Okay. Now, but an independent director can lose his independence if he now begins to have material shares in the company. For instance, the code says more than 0.01% of the paid-up capital. If he has more than that, or if he has that and above, then he loses his independence. If he represents majority shareholders, he loses his independence. If he has worked with the company, if he's working with company advisors or consultants and all that, he loses his independence. If he has family members who have something to do with the company, he loses his independence. If he joins the pension scheme, if he joins the share option scheme, if he's involved in so many things, then he loses independence.
Thank you very much, Mr.
Thank you very much
for enlightening us on the appointments of board directors. This is where we wrap it up today. We thank you for joining us on the program.
Thank you very much.
And we invite you to join us once again on the program next week, same station, same time. I'm Tunde Odeyemi. Bye for now.
Corporate Governance Platform, a program from the Institute of Chartered Secretaries and Administrators of Nigeria, ICSAN, is now at your doorstep.
By the way, what is corporate governance and what are its key pillars?
Will there be any conflict of interest if our person combines the roles of our chairman and a chief executive officer in a corporate organization?
What can Nigeria do to get international recognition in the context of the application of corporate governance?
These and many more questions will be answered on
Corporate Governance Platform.